It's funny. Have you ever noticed how the moment we hear a word like impermanence or someone says life is unpredictable, our very first reaction is usually this big, heavy knot of anxiety right in our stomachs? I mean, we are fundamentally wired, especially these days, to view change or the passing of time as this terrible, looming tragedy. We just want to cling to things exactly as they are, kind of hoping we can magically freeze time. But what if we've got it all completely wrong? What if the very thing we're so terrified of, impermanence, is actually the engine behind literally everything good in our lives?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to completely flip your perspective on this deep-seated fear. We're going to dive into a brilliant analysis by modern scholar Dr. I-Hung Chen. We'll be unpacking a very specific and honestly pretty hilarious anecdote from the ancient Chinese text, the Yanzi Chengqiu, also known as the Spring and Autumn Annals of Master Yan. And trust me, this one single historical moment is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about change, mortality, and holding on to the past.
Section 1. Duke Jing's Grief at Mount Nu. Okay, let's travel way back in time to the ancient state of Qi to set the stage here. Picture this scene. Duke Jing, who is the absolute ruler of the state of Qi, is out on a grand tour. He hikes up to the very top of Mount Nu, and he's gazing out over the northern edge of his capital city. He sees his vast, magnificent territory, the enduring mountains, the flowing rivers, the whole shebang. And suddenly, boom, it hits him. Just this heavy, terrifying dread of his own mortality. He literally burst into tears right there on the mountain, crying out, "How can I leave all this and die?" He is just totally overwhelmed by the thought that, unlike those mountains, he can't live forever to enjoy his beautiful kingdom.
Now, you really have to notice the stark contrast in reactions here. On one side, you have Duke Jing crying his eyes out alongside his two sycophantic ministers, Ai Kong and Liang Shuju. These two are clearly either very foolish or just super eager to validate their boss's emotions, so they start weeping right along with him. But then, notice the clever statesman Yanzi standing off to the side. He's not crying. Actually, scratch that. He isn't just not crying. He is secretly laughing to himself at this entire ridiculous spectacle.
And of course, the Duke catches him. You can just imagine the Duke wiping away his tears, completely indignant. He glares at Yanzi and essentially demands, "I am overwhelmed with sorrow today, and my ministers are grieving with me. Why in the world are you the only one laughing?" It's a super tense moment, right? The ruler of the state is pouring his absolute heart out, and his minister is just stating they're chuckling. Section 2, Yanzi's sobering reply. So here's where Yanzi delivers this brilliant logical twist that completely shatters the Duke's self-pity. He steps forward and gives the Duke a totally different way to look at the passage of time. He says to the Duke, "Imagine if permanence actually existed, if the wise and brave men of the past literally never died. Well, your very first ancestor Tai Gong would still be sitting on the throne today, or maybe the great Huan Gong, or Zhuang Gong, or Ling Gong." The absolutely crucial point Yanzi is making is this. If those ancient rulers had lived forever, Duke Jing, you would never have even seen the throne. It is precisely because of impermanence, because your ancestors fell one by one and passed away, that the baton was eventually handed down to you. Yanzi is pointing out the ultimate irony here. The Duke is currently enjoying the absolute biggest benefit of impermanence, and yet he's standing on a mountain literally crying about it. And Yanzi, he doesn't pull his punches. He bluntly labels the Duke's tears as unkind, or buren in Chinese. And this gives us a fascinating new definition for the word. It's not just about being mean to someone, it's about being fundamentally selfish. The Duke is crying because he wants to permanently hoard the throne all to himself, completely ignoring the natural cycle of life that handed him the throne in the first place. So Yanzi explains, "Look, I was laughing because I saw one absurdly selfish ruler, followed by two flattering, foolish yes-men, putting on this ridiculous theatrical tragedy." Section 3, Attachment in Modern Life. Now, let's fast forward from ancient Qi to today. Because, let's be honest, human nature hasn't changed a bit. We still obsessively cling to permanence. Think about wedding vows, right? We promise eternal, unchanging love, often completely forgetting that the world's true nature is constant flux. The author of our source text brings up an interesting modern example to illustrate this. A wealthy married man, Mr. Guo, who meets someone at a golf course and has a sudden change of heart. Now, while society usually rushes to moral outrage, the author notes something much deeper philosophically here. The human mind is fundamentally built to change. It rarely stays in one place forever. There's an old saying about how incredibly powerful the mind's ability to shift is. It's the power of a single thought.
Expecting any mental state to be perfectly permanent goes against the very nature of human consciousness itself.
We actually see this expectation of permanence everywhere, especially in the workplace. Think about it. The old boss, just like Duke Jing, desperately desires permanence so they can keep their power, dragging their feet on retiring. But meanwhile, down the hall, their subordinates are whispering, just waiting for the boss to leave. They desperately desire impermanence, because without things changing, without the old guard moving on, there is zero chance for the new generation to step up. Just like the throne of Qi, the corner office absolutely requires impermanence to function.
Section 4. Embracing impermanence's value.
Let's really digest why a world without change would actually be terrifying. The author's teacher once posed a brilliant question. Imagine if everything in the world was perfectly permanent. It would be entirely static, just like a photograph frozen in time. Would a world like that have any meaning? I mean, think about it. Would you really want to be trapped as a toddler forever? Unable to grow, unable to learn? No way. A brain that never changes, that strictly holds on to permanent fixed ideas, just becomes pedantic, inflexible, and ultimately lifeless. Change isn't the enemy, it's the absolute prerequisite for growth. Which brings us right back to Yanzi's critique of being unkind. Wanting things to stay exactly the same, wishing for eternal youth, permanent beauty, or endless life solely for yourself, while completely disregarding the mortality and the natural flow of everyone else around you, that is the true meaning of selfishness. It's a total failure to recognize that you are just one part of a massive flowing ecosystem that fundamentally relies on transition. Let's circle back to that modern example of Mr. Guo for a second, just to see this irony in action. The author points out a really deep philosophical irony regarding Mr. Guo's current wife. She might feel incredibly wronged by his changing affections, right? But if she truly understood the principle of impermanence, she'd realize that her very marriage is actually a product of it. Her current status exists only because Mr. Guo's first wife passed away. She was once a stranger, and she gained her position through the unavoidable, natural shifting of circumstances. It's a stark reminder that all things that come together due to converging circumstances must eventually part when those circumstances change. The author leaves us with this incredibly powerful, sobering conclusion: expecting permanence is a joke, and a severe joke turns into a tragedy. Refusing to accept reality and constantly fighting against the natural tide of impermanence is exactly what creates our human suffering.
Section 5. About the author, Dr. I-Hung Chen.
Before we wrap up, I want to briefly introduce the mind behind this profound modern interpretation. This analysis comes to us from Dr. I-Hung Chen. He holds a PhD in Chinese literature from the prestigious National Chengchi University. But he's not just an academic looking at dusty old texts. His expertise spans Chinese philosophy, Taoism, and Buddhism, and it's all backed by over 30 years of Qigong practice and 2 decades of meditation within the Nyingma school lineage. He has this really unique ability to blend rigorous textual analysis with deeply practical, lived philosophical wisdom, bringing ancient texts like the Yanzi Chunkyu vividly into our modern lives.
So, the next time you feel anxious about a big change, or you catch yourself wishing time would just stand still for a minute, remember Duke Jing crying his eyes out on Mount Nu, and more importantly, remember Yanzi laughing. The passing of time isn't a tragedy. It is the very mechanism that makes room for you, for your growth, and for life itself. Embrace the changing world. If you found this explainer eye-opening, please make sure to share it with someone who might need a fresh perspective, hit that subscribe button, and drop a like. So, what's one big change in your life that you initially feared, but ultimately brought you something absolutely great? Think about it. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.